Welcome to USA Global TV and Radio, where our mission is to provide education, entertainment, hope, and inspiration. USA Global TV and Radio connects you with experts and audiences all around the world every single day to help you succeed in business and to live a richer life. Visit us at usaglobaltv.com to learn about career and life-changing training and mentoring programs like the Listening Mentor. Subscribe to our newsletter to stay informed about our special programs and offers. Discover how you can become a guest on one of our shows or a host or producer of a USA Global TV and Radio show of your very own. That's USA Global TV and Radio, where the doctor is always in.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. It's so nice to have you wherever you are in the world joining us. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon. I'm Dr. Jacalyn-Kerbeck, and you are watching or listening to USA Global TV and Radio. We are coming to you right now from about 10 video platforms and probably 15 audio platforms. So thank you to those of you who are on the podcast listening to us. We really appreciate you. And thank you to our new followers on Instagram. We welcome you. Our show today is the Resume Whisperer, and we are going to be looking at a topic that many people might not actually consider when they're doing their job search, and that's the power of etiquette and manners. We have a show here called The Power of Etiquette and Manners. It's actually tomorrow, and what I've learned so much about life is that everything that we do, we need to show up in a genuine, authentic way. We need to have compassion and kindness and respect for others. And this goes really well when we're looking at a job search and how are we going to be interacting with those people who are interviewing us. So let's welcome the expert in this area. His name is JosefStetter. He's joining us from Canada. And not only is he the resume whisperer, but he's also a corporate culturalist. Let's find out what he's been up to. Hello, Joseph.
Hello, hello. Excited to be here again. And yes, I agree with you that etiquette follows us everywhere we go.
It's an absolute pleasure to have you here with us today. And every show that we do together, I just learn so much, and I just appreciate the dynamics that we have. And I've gotten a lot of great feedback from people who are watching the show. So before we get into the topic, we always have new people who are joining us, especially, as I mentioned, Instagram and people on the audio platforms. So what exactly do you do as a resume whisperer?
So in its simplest form, I make sure that people are highlighted correctly. Most people that do their job don't think about how great they are and how to verbalize or write on their resume the amount of results that they produce, their genius, their expertise. Most people kind of go, I know how to do this and I have experience in this, but that's not what's getting you the job these days, right? It's important to highlight, this is the result I've produced. This is the initiatives I've done. These are, the kind of work that I'm capable of producing, leading a team. So anything that's quantitative in terms of dollar figures, percentage figures, time figures, inventory figures, macros, templates, policies, procedures, documentation, special initiatives, etc., that you directly contribute to a company's growth.
Thank you. Thank you. That makes a lot of sense. And so Resume Whisperer is really an integral part of a job search. And as you know, we've discussed before, a job search can take place at any point in a person's life. I shared with you that I've had a handful of jobs and you've had a number of jobs. So we're coming from different perspectives, which I think is great. But at any age, somebody could be interested in either re-entering the workforce or leaving to start and go and do something themselves. And when they're working with someone like you, it takes a lot of that empty, frustrating time away because you are an expert. And you found over 11,000 people gainful employment. Tell us about that.
So again, using my systems, my tools, my techniques that I've invested 30,000 hours to master, I've been able to help people land their dream job in as little as 2 days. Because if your resume is written correctly and the way that you apply for a job is optimized, you can see results sooner than later. Most people default to the easiest and probably worst place to look for a job, which is the job boards, because the job boards are easy access. But what happens is on the job boards is that one job posting can get between 350 and 5,000 applicants. And if you don't know the tricks to get noticed, you get lost in the shuffle. And I've had that experience myself when I was looking for new employment or different employment.
Yes, and I think I've had that as well in the past. I'd like to start talking about etiquette and manners. And as I mentioned, we do have a show every week. We've been doing it for 2 years. So I have one understanding of etiquette and manners. I'd love to have you share what your understanding of etiquette and manners is, and then we'll have a conversation about it.
So again, there's multiple layers of etiquette and manners when it comes to job finding. There's the etiquette and manners before the interview. So if your interview is scheduled for, let's say, 10 a.m. in the morning, you should be there 15 minutes early. If you show up at 10:01, 10:02, it's actually disrespectful and you're wasting the person's time. And you know what? If they have set time to interview, you're also cutting into your own time. A lot of people that are smokers might have a cigarette before they go in the interview because it'll theoretically help them relax, or so they think. But myself, for example, I'm actually partially allergic to the smell of cigarettes, especially if it's very strong. So if you're coming into an interview and I smell cigarettes on you, I'm going to be so distracted that I'm probably not going to pay attention to what you're saying. And therefore, by default, I've dismissed you. Right. Similarly, a lot of people will have a coffee, especially if it's a morning interview, and they'll bring the coffee with them into the interview. Now, having water is one thing to clear your throat, make sure that it's easier to understand you, but having coffee can also be kind of a distractor, because if every question you're taking a sip while you're thinking of the answer, again, the interviewer can focus on the coffee mug as opposed to you. And also having a coffee mug can affect your posturing during the interview and how you sound confident, because it's a distraction there. Obviously the resume should be written correctly. Sometimes typos do happen, but you should be proofreading it and checking it, making sure that, company name is accurate, things, especially if you're using kind of the same thing over and over, but for different applications. If you're going to be late for whatever reason, let's say there was some sort of emergency, make sure you reach ahead and call and let them know and speak to them, because again, especially if the higher you go up, the leadership doesn't want you to kind of waste their time and not communicate. There is a level of, again, and I'll use this as extreme etiquette. Before there, I had a candidate that showed up to an accounting firm, and as soon as he showed up and they welcomed him in, he mentioned he had to go to the bathroom and then disappeared to the bathroom for like 25 minutes. Not the best etiquette idea in terms of making a first impression. Then during the interview, there are certain etiquettes in terms of posturing, in terms of vocal variety, in terms of length of answers to the questions that are being asked for you, as well as just the mannerism and the behaviors. One of the, we'll call it, realm of trick questions is to ask something like, have you ever had a boss that you disliked, or a coworker that you couldn't get along with? And if you become negative and angry, you've pretty much destroyed your own interview. So, there's a lot of steps for etiquette, and they play a role in the listening and the experience people have of you.
Joseph, I have a big smile here backstage. You were talking, because And I'm sorry, everybody. I know that this is a popular thing. I am not a fan of coffee. I've never had a cup of coffee in my life. I can't stand the smell of it brewing. I hate the smell of cigarettes. So if somebody were to come in, this would really freak me out when it comes to etiquette matters. What about when they go to shake the hand and and again, nothing personal about anybody. We're just talking about etiquette matters. They had been smoking and then they go to shake your hand. What do you do in that situation?
Again, the smoking is not as much, but some people, let's say, will have very clampy hands, so they're moist and feels a little bit awkward. Again, if you suffer from that, get rid of the pink elephant as part of the etiquette by saying, listen, I apologize. I'm just going to let you know that my hand is, I'm nervous and my hands are a little bit sweaty or a little bit wet. So if you still want to shake my hand, that's okay. But I'm just letting you know if you don't want to. I don't want to offend you, because then you're not offending them. You're just kind of acknowledging. Similarly, for example, in some culture, like Japanese culture, First Nations cultures, looking directly into the eyes is considered offensive. Sometimes in Middle Eastern cultures as well. So a martial arts trick is to look above the eyebrows. It looks like you're looking into the eyes. It gives the person the respect that they deserve, but it doesn't go against what you believe in. So if you're shy or culturally looking into the eyes, because in some cultures like Japanese, First Nations, looking into the eyes is looking into the soul. By looking right above the eyebrows, you're following Western etiquette of an interview without going against what you believe in, so that you feel uncomfortable during the interview. Right. So those are simple examples. I think I've mentioned in other shows, people that are, especially men that are from areas like India, Sri Lanka, Pakistan, Bangladesh, it is very common for the men to wear multiple rings on their fingers. Sometimes they have as many as 8 or 10 rings on their fingers. And I understand that culturally these rings can be health blessings and abundance wealthing and status and various other things. But in Western society, if you show up to an interview and as a male, you're wearing, 10 rings on your finger, most of the time people will look at the ring and it's going, like, it's there. So, I understand how important it is to you culturally. So wear 2, maybe 3, and then put the rest of them in your pocket so they're still physically on you. So you're not going against your culture, but again, you're kind of adapting to Western style etiquette, right? So those are very simple examples that relate to not even what you're saying, but the behaviors. As someone who has been in recruiting for nearly 20 years, I look at the physiology of the person that's answering me. So I'll never forget when I built my call center from scratch. I interviewed somebody and I was like, can you share an example of how you demonstrate teamwork? And the woman was like, I worked as a recruiter and we had this big order and I found the person and I didn't get commission for it. I gave the other person and their face was livid. And when I asked a few other questions, I was like, okay, you're the type of person that will stab everybody in the back so that you can get ahead and you can get the credit. And that's not who I want on my team. You might be very good, you might be very talented, but the physiology of the anger was so obvious that I was like, no, thanks, bye. Kind of thing. And literally the moment that happened, like, to me, the interview was actually done. Right. And so I'm sure that a lot of companies do that too. So you got to be very careful about showing or expressing a lot of anger, a lot of frustration, a lot of negative energy that employers worry will translate to you on the job, for example.
Great facial expressions, by the way. It's
Thank
fantastic. I want to go back to something that you said earlier. So you have this interview, you're racing to get there. There's traffic. You have to go to the bathroom. You get there and the interview's starting in 3 minutes and somebody comes out to get you. And you really need to go to the restroom, because if you don't go to the restroom, you're probably going to be sitting there the whole time, rocking back and forth. So what is the appropriate thing to say?
Again, if you need to go on number 1, it's quick if you there. but not to go and, let's scroll on my phone for 25 minutes while people are waiting for me to interview. The example I gave earlier was somebody that went and did a number 2 and was basically gone for 25 minutes. As soon as they arrived in the interview, or like did 5 minutes of interview, said, I need to go to the bathroom. They're like, no problem. And then disappeared for 25 minutes kind of thing. So,
That's a tough
like,
one.
if you watch Big Bang Theory, Sheldon Cooper was always about, regulating when his bowel movements occur at this time of the day and so forth. Obviously, if, your body, you kind of know when you need. So if you know that usually you have a movement at around this time, don't schedule an interview at that time. First of all, it's kind of common sense. But generally speaking, like before you go to the interview, when you're leaving your house or whatever, go to the bathroom. Now, what's interesting is, and I'll say it this way, is that, there's different places. And obviously, like if you compare Florida, because I know you lived in New Jersey/New York. So New York is crazy busy, right? And has tons of traffic. So generally speaking, if I know that I have an hour commute regularly to get somewhere, I usually leave an hour and 45 minutes early. So that even if I arrive 45 minutes early, I can go to the bathroom at whatever the food court or a coffee shop beside, as opposed to doing it when I'm in the interview, for example. Also, depending on whether you're driving or taking subway or metro or whatever form of transportation, if there's weather conditions, that might delay it. I know that, let's say, in Toronto, the subway system, there are always delays. There's always emergencies. There's always, routes that are closed. So I always give that extra half hour to an hour of time to get there. And if I get there and I'm like, oh, okay, it actually only took me 45 minutes, just like I expected it to, then okay, make sure I've gone to the bathroom, make sure if I need my coffee, have my coffee, and show up without the coffee to the interview, for example. But if you're leaving things to the last minute and you're quote unquote timing it to be exactly like, okay, I need to be 15 minutes early, I show up 16 minutes early, and then you're like, oh, I need to go again. If you're at reception and you need to go to the bathroom, no big deal. If you've started the interview and you excuse yourself, and again, if it's quick, no big deal. But if it's, I need to do some thinking, bathroom, maybe not, kind of thing. So
Joseph, I can't even keep a straight face back here. I love it. Something I just want to share with our audience is that if you're going for an interview, right, this is not an everyday thing. This is something that's special that could change your life. So plan accordingly. And it's not just you just show up and you didn't have anything thought out. As somebody, and part of the reason I'm laughing is I'm an ulcerative colitis patient, right? So I know where all the bathrooms are. I have to plan everything out in advance. I'm not going to be eating or drinking before I go to see someone, because I want to make sure that I show up as my best. Now, here's the next thing. Okay, I don't know what the answer is to this, but I see this all the time. People show up for a meeting. Okay, we're talking about interviews today, and they've got the phone and they put the phone face down. Okay, which, by the way, germs everywhere. I don't know, I don't get that. But the phone's there and the ringer's on. Why do you have the phone out? You have an interview for however long, 30 minutes, an hour. Are you really going to take a call?
look, again, the only exception would be there's a medical emergency, your partner's expecting, or due anytime, so you're in kind of that state of, I need to be on call and I need to be ready. That would be the only time that you really need it. Anything else might not be the best idea. Now, again, if you like, there's difference if you're doing the interviewing versus you're the interviewer. Because, like, for example, as a recruiter, I've gone to certain clients and said, I'll take less than an hour of your time. So when I came in, I put my phone, I showed them that I put an hour timer, and I put it on the desk and put it away so that they see that I am respectful of their time, because it said that it's going to, like, they said that they will give me a maximum of X amount of time, so that they see that I'm not trying to just waste their time, right? So if the conversation is going great and an hour happens, I said, you know what, we said an hour. Do you need me to come back for a second, or would you like to continue? But I asked for permission for that, right? We're so attached to our phones that, we might have an aneurysm if we don't check our messages and respond like instantly, unfortunately. But yeah, it's a situation where, they're in, and I'm going to add to that. I don't know why this has become so popular, both from the candidates and the companies. This whole notion of ghosting, right? I had a company that I was speaking to that expressed interest in a project I'm doing, and then my contact, who is the CEO of the company, ghosted me. Like, didn't respond to my emails, didn't respond to my text, didn't respond to my phone calls. And I'm going like, let me know you're not interested. That's fine, rather than wasting my time and energy. So same thing with candidates. If you change your mind, you don't want the job, you don't want the interview, just send them one sentence: listen, I've changed my mind, thank you for the opportunity, and be done with it. Because people are forgetting that as much as we have 7.3 billion people in the world, this is a very small world. So if you work in a particular industry, like let's say you're working in accounting, if you ghost a few companies, the seniors, the partners, they will switch, or the senior managers, and you might end up working for the people that you ghosted, or potentially applying to them, and they'll dismiss you because they'll remember that you ghosted them. So at least have a common decency to go, thank you, but no thanks. It is amazing to me how much it's being done right now. And it seems to be like, whatever. Like, I've had candidates that have gone through 4 interviews, were kind of told that an offer is coming, and then the company just disappeared. And these are established companies, not just, startups. But, vice versa. If a candidate is not interested in a job, like, you have to understand, a company's investing time and energy to interview you, to set time aside from leadership's perspective, management's perspective, to get to know you, to make sure that you're a fit, rather than kind of killing their hour and wasting their productivity. Have a little bit of etiquette and courtesy, and send a one-liner: change my mind, not going to come into the interview, so that they can rearrange their day if they need to.
Yes, such good direction, because it is such a small world. And sometimes people think, oh, this person's in a different state, they don't know anyone I know, but it's a very, very small world. And something I want to share with you about the phone, because I think I have a different perspective than you. I respect what your perspective is. I remember I was at a stand-up presentation. I was standing and I was presenting to a team of executives in Maryland, actually. And I had my phone out. They couldn't see it where I was because my computer was out, but I had the phone out and it was on silent. And I was going through the pitch for the stand-up, the final presentation. And my mother was calling me. My mother never called me. This is, I don't know, like 5 or 6 years ago. And the fact that she was calling me, I was completely distracted because I thought, she doesn't call me. Why is she calling me? So now I'm going on blah, blah, blah. And she calls the second time. So finally, I had to stop the interview, the presentation, and say, I'm really sorry, but my mom's calling me and I need to find out what she wants. And here she had been attacked by a cat, and the cat's claws were stuck in her arm. But anyway, that was the end of the presentation. That was the end. So in hindsight, I couldn't have done anything for her at the moment. She probably would have called someone else after me, because I was in another state, and now the presentation was over. So if I didn't have my phone out, I wouldn't have been distracted, and there wasn't anything I could do anyway. What are your thoughts on that?
Right. Again, look, I agree with you. You have to understand, like I said, I preempted it saying, if you know you're expecting something, that is the exception. Meaning, like, my wife is pregnant, she's 9 months, she's due any day kind of thing, then I would preempt before I start the interview that I apologize, I'm putting my phone out, but my wife's 9 months pregnant. She might go into labor and I need to be aware. So something like that would be okay. Again, unless there's something you need from your phone for the presentation, you shouldn't have your phone out, period. I mean, even if it's in your pocket on silent or vibrate, as you said, it is distracting. And as soon as there's a ding or as soon as there's this, we kind of try to pay attention to it, right? So if you know something is happening, like they're, mainly, I would say, medical related, or and again, I don't know if this is necessarily an exception, but given, especially in some places, real estate has become, like I know at the beginning of the pandemic around me, houses were selling 300,000 over ask, for example. And there was a bidding war where 10 people were interested in the same house. And that would be a time where, your real estate might need to contact you right away and say, okay, we need an extra 2,000. Are you okay with that? For example, because we're almost there, blah, blah, blah. But again, depending on where you are, depending on the state of real estate or something, it's not necessarily justifiable. And most of the time, real estate deals are more at nighttime rather than during the day in terms of when offers are accepted, especially if there's bidding wars type of environment. But yeah, phone being on the desk and potentially open to be heard is when you're expecting or you're aware of something in the background that is of concern. Like, like my kids. I mean, I have it there, but like my wife knows that during the day not to call me. We also have a system that if it's an emergency, she calls me 3 times. So she lets it dial a few rings, she hangs up, she'll wait a few seconds, she'll there, and then I know it's an emergency because we've preset that that's a signal. So if she just calls once, I'm not, like if it's a ring, it's on silent, vibrate, I'm like, okay, nothing important. I'm not taking out my phone. But if it's 3 times in a row where there's been a few seconds pauses between the rings and I know it's a new call, I know that's an emergency. And so in my family, like even with my mother, even with that's been communicated, and that's been kind of, if we need to, that's the emergency signal in case we're busy during the day kind of thing. But again, if that's something that might be preempted. So like that way you've kind of let them know in advance and they will respect your level of integrity to say, I might get a call about this, so I apologize in advance, kind of thing.
Yeah, and I think that makes a lot of sense in a case where you might have multiple interviews in a day. So maybe you're going out to corporate and they're going to have you meet with somebody at 9, somebody at 10, somebody 11. So you might have to check your phone in that case.
Again, most interviews, even if they're 2 hours long, usually you'll let the people closest to you know that you're in an interview. So if you're getting a call during the interview, it might be another interview setup, which would be very awkward as semantics, but you shouldn't have your phone. As simple etiquette, obviously no one's going to go to the interview without their phones. The only time you go anywhere without your phone is going to a consulate, because you're not allowed to have your phone there for security. But otherwise, have it on silent, have it on vibrate, so that, acknowledge it if necessary. And also, again, the duration of the interview might impact theirs. And in your case, Dr. Jacalyn, if you know that like there's a family member that is not clear-headed or in the best shape, just kind of let the interviewer know, and that also gives you credibility that you care enough for in your case, your mom, to make sure that it's not an emergency or anything like that. And it's one of those where if it's like, listen, before I start, my mom is got, let's say, dementia, and if she gets really scared, she might call me. I know it's unprofessional, but I'm just letting you know in advance that that's the only time if my phone rings that I'll look at it or answer it, kind of thing. And then again, you've done your due diligence of not ruining your presentation because you've taken ownership of it before it is an issue.
And I agree with you. I think that's the human factor. I think something that comes up on the other side is, let's say I'm I'm the hiring manager. I might think to myself, oh, okay, this person has a number of things, or they've got something major going on. How much of themselves are they going to be able to dedicate to the work that we have here? I mean, that could be just a natural thing that comes up.
Correct. But this is where your examples will offset that, because if you show how dedicated you are to producing results, that becomes a moot point.
Right. Good point. Okay. So here's my next question. And I've had this when I was in corporate. I went actually 2 different companies. I worked for both of them for a long period of time. But in both cases, I had to interview over breakfast with an executive, over lunch with a different executive, and with my significant other for dinner. And I heard horror stories later after I was hired that the executives would share that they're interviewing someone for dinner and the person orders the most expensive steak and lobster, like just what went crazy ordering food. And everything that you're doing, the way you hold your fork, the way you cut your food, the salt that you put, everything's being analyzed and reviewed. And I don't know that people are actually aware of that. So before we dive into that, I have a more basic question. You show up for the interview and someone comes out to get you, administrative assistant, or maybe it's even the person you're interviewing with, and they suggest stopping by the kitchen to get a cup of coffee or a glass of water. So now you're not bringing it in yourself, but they're suggesting, hey, why don't we stop by this kitchen? Would you like to have a cup of coffee? Yes.
If they offer it to you, that's a different thing than if they offer it to you, because it's a level of trying to make you feel more comfortable. So if they're offering you, like, especially, like, I would take water, because water is, like I said, it's more clear throat as opposed to ungulping water every 2 seconds. But again, that's a different, if somebody's offering it to you, I think that's more just being polite and respectful. And you can always decline and say, thank you, I'm fine. I just actually had a coffee before arriving here, or I'm not thirsty. But if you take water because it's not distracting, and again, depending on how good you are at expressing and sharing the greatness that you have and the results that you produced, you might need that water because you'll be a little bit parched.
Yes, thank you. So now you're moving on in the interview process. You got there, you had the breakfast interview, you had the next interview.
I want to go back to your comment, if I may. I want to go back to the breakfast interview, or just in general, like, first of all, ordering the most expensive. Yes, that does tell you. But also, just like a date, if you're having a breakfast, lunch, or dinner with, as an interview, you shouldn't also be ordering sloppy joes and, chicken wings that, everything is all over your face. And because that also leaves an impression that might not be. And, there's a very famous story, I'm sure, Henry Ford was interviewing engineers to work for him, to build the car. And he invited 2 candidates to a restaurant. One was very polite. When the waitress came, acknowledged her, thanked her for, serving them, for the time. The other one was rude and give me now. When the food, they all looked at the menus, ordered the food. When the first engineer got his food, he automatically grabbed the salt and put salt on the food. The other engineer tasted it first and then added salt. And after Henry Ford saw this, he looked at the first engineer that ordered his food and said, you will not be going forward with the interview. The other person got the job. And the first engineer was kind of shocked and said, why? You didn't even ask me a single question. And Henry Ford said to him, well, I look for people that understand and appreciate people around them. When you came in, it was all about you. you ignored the waitress, or you were rude to her, you were snarky. When your food arrived, before tasting, you added the salt. The under engineer made changes after tasting, which means that on the job, you're probably going to jump the gun. You're not going to test it first. I need an engineer that knows how to test, so I'm hiring the second engineer. And it just goes to show that, yes, as you said earlier, everything is observed, everything is monitored, and everything is recorded or scored as why you should or should not be a great candidate.
I know that story. We've talked about that on the Power of Etiquette and Manners. That's a good one. Now, what about when it comes to etiquette and manners, revealing a lot of personal information about yourself? So now you're sitting down to have the meal. It's still an interview, but yet we're kind of like feeling comfortable and we like the other person. There's some kind of, work chemistry going there. We just start blah, 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 telling them everything that we shouldn't be saying. What should we talk about and what shouldn't we?
So again, you said it very importantly. It's an interview, not a therapy session, right? It's a stranger, not your best friend, right? So this is where I said, be careful of the traps of, let me tell you all the negative. Let me go into that vicious cycle. So even if you're asked about, did you have somebody you disliked or disagreed with, or a decision that you disagreed with from your boss or anything like that, your answer needs to be formulated in a way that says, look, my job is to perform certain duties and to take guidance from my leadership on how to do those duties. If something is said that I might disagree with, it is my job to adapt my communication style to that of my leader in order to fully understand or ask for clarification in what they need. If you start going, oh yeah, this person's a moron and this person is, that, and I'm just the smartest person, you're shooting yourself in the foot. You don't want to get into that vicious cycle. Even if people know that the company has a very bad reputation, has turnover, has, there, do not go there under any circumstances. Do not go into this, oh yeah, I read this about them and they're like this. And because again, you're proving that you can easily be sucked in. So you need to have, etiquette in keeping things positive, focusing on the results that you produce, the significance of the work that you've done, your ability to handle whatever's thrown at you, both in communication and in workload, so that employers feel confident to hire you.
Now, here's a question, because I know this has happened. It's come up with people. The meal is now finished, and the candidate asks if they can pay for the check. Hey, can I chip in for this, or can I pick this up? Is that appropriate?
I think that's a sign of respect. It's a sign of gratitude. At the end of the day, if the company's inviting you for a lunch, dinner, they have an expense account on the business anyhow. But just like when you go out with your friends, right? If you're sitting there going, I hope one of my friends picks up the check and I'm not going to say anything, or I'm just going to conveniently go to the bathroom when the check comes. Look, this is where it's kind of gauging the conversation. It's kind of offering to pay is that little extra. Napoleon Hill in Think and Grow Rich talks about going the extra mile. You're applying for a job, you're offering to pay. If you remember the movie The Pursuit of Happiness, I'm just going to make that. And then, when Will Smith is asked, or when his manager says, do you have $5? And Will Smith looks in his wallet and it's the last $5 he has for the next 2 weeks, but he gives it to the manager, right? There's a level of, had he not given it to the manager, it might have kind of sent a bad impression, right? Similarly, there's a scene where when he comes for the interview, he was painting his house and his car was towed, and he comes and kind of pardon my expression, a wife beater kind of shirt and jogging pants that are full of paint. And they look at him like, what's going on? And he says, listen, I was trying to think of a great story to tell you. The truth of the matter is I was painting my apartment. I had tickets on my car. My car got towed. And I spent the day in jail as pay there because of the parking tickets. So I apologize that I'm not wearing a suit and tie. And luckily for him, the HR manager that met him in the cab, he was always wearing a suit and tie even when he was chasing for the opportunity for the internship. And so the moment he acknowledged it, the leadership kind of chuckled and said, okay. And then he impressed them and they forgot about what he was wearing. And so it's the same idea that, again, not that the company is expecting you to pay, but the offer for it is definitely important. And, it's just like when you go out with your friends, you want to show that, like, I mean, depending on your circle of friends, there are certain friends where you take turns, like, okay, we went out last time, you paid, this time I'll pay, right? And as long as, and there's a kind of understanding that, so nobody keeps, math of how much you paid, because it gets rinsed out because it evens out eventually. I also have friends that when we go out and it's one bill, they're like, you owe exactly 35.80 cents, for example. So don't take chances, make the offer, especially if it's not a luxury restaurant and it's a common restaurant, that allows you to pick up the tab, even if it's 50. Again, it also depends on your financial situation. So at least make the offer. And if you can't pay it in full, offer to pay the tip, offer to pay something for the sake of, I'm sure, or again, take ownership. Like, I'm struggling financially, I can contribute this much to the meal. Hopefully if I have this job, I'll be in a position to treat you next time. And I think that would be a great transition and a great circle back.
Yes, I love that. I love it. I think this is definitely going to be a two-part episode because I have so many more questions. We're coming to the end. But one question I have that I don't know that people actually think about, and this actually happened to someone that I eventually ended up working with, but she was a mother with children and she showed up for the interview, and it was around, let's say it was 11 o'clock, 11:30, and the interview was going so well, the hiring manager said, I'd really like to grab a bite to eat. Do you have time? She said, I need to make a call. And, so so as they're walking out, the hiring manager said, why don't we take your car? Well, her car was a disaster. There were food wrappers everywhere, things from the children. And so she was mortified. And part of the reason why the person suggested that is because this job would be driving clients around, and he wanted to see what her vehicle looked like. And he still hired her, but gave her, a little bit of a pep talk. So is there any relevance? Have you heard of this before?
So I'm going to use inviting somebody over to your house. Like, I have a 3.5-year-old and a 1.5-year-old that I'm very blessed are full of energy. And when I mean full of energy, from the moment they wake up, they don't stop running around and they don't stop making a mess everywhere. My son, especially now, who's a year and a half old, he loves to try and grab pencil crayons and then try to draw everywhere on the walls, on the tables, everything like that. So when, as much as we have a booster chair to put him in when we feed him, sometimes, we'll give him a yogurt that he can drink and he'll run around the house and spill the yogurt all over the floor. So if we have a play date for like one of our kids, predominantly my daughter, if in the morning he ran around and made a mess with the yogurt, as soon as the person walks in to the door, the first thing I say is, I apologize for the mess. My kids went a little crazy this morning or just before you came, and I haven't had a full chance to clean and organize. And most people will go, you got two healthy, beautiful kids, no big deal. I know what you're going through because I've had kids or I have my own kids and so forth. So I think if there was an acknowledgement of, look, I apologize for the mess in the car. I have two little kids and, I have to feed them in the car between picking them up from daycare and stuff like that. Like, my daughter now is learned about bear paws. And because she likes bear paws, my son, who's 1.5 years, likes bear paws too. Except that when my son eats bear paws, there's crumbs everywhere. So if I give them a bear paw when I pick them up from daycare, I can assure you that if you look in my car, you'll find crumbs. So if I'm driving somebody, I'll apologize and say, I have 2 little kids, as you can see by the car seats. I apologize if there's a little bit of a mess in the car. And that's it.
Well, it also sounds like a great way to have a bonding experience with somebody. You can have some laughs and say, yeah, I remember that. And yeah, don't worry about it.
Exactly. But I think
Yeah.
that the key thing is to, like, take ownership of it. And, there's an expression of get rid of the pink elephant. So any opportunity that you have to get rid of a pink elephant by taking ownership of it and having integrity and kind of, we'll call it poking fun at yourself, you can, it allows for the dynamics to start off on the right foot, because if you're confident enough to make fun of yourself, you're going to be a great asset in the company, kind of thing, because you won't react, you won't have that negative energy. So, like, I joke around, like, and this is a perfect segue, Dr. Jacalyn, like, since we are friends and I follow you, I know that you've just completed your 750th, what is it, body core program?
Solid core.
Do, and extremely dedicated to your health and well-being. And I will jokingly say, listen, I did not acquire my wonderful physique overnight. These took years of dedication and commitment. And again, I'm slightly overweight, stocky, whatever you want to call it. And so there's a level where I will joke about that from a perspective of, yes, I could easily afford to lose probably 80 pounds. With 2 little kids, a sleep routine that's not consistent, days starting at 4:35 a.m. and going till midnight, I'm not as dedicated to my working out right now. And I acknowledge and I'm aware of that, but there's other priorities like my kids that, between me going to the gym for 2 hours or me spending 2 hours with my kids, especially since they're in daycare during the day, those 2 hours with my kids is so much more important to me right now than the workout. So workouts will come later, and I know where I'm at and I acknowledge it, but it's a level of, again, just recognizing that different people, different priorities, and just to kind of own it and respect it and say it. And this is where, things like in both Islam and Judaism, if you're very religious, it is offensive for a woman to shake hands with somebody who's not her husband. So simple etiquette, we could say, my religion will not allow me to shake your hand, especially if it's the opposite sex. And the moment I acknowledge that, I've gotten rid of the pink elephant that I'm being disrespectful because I'm not shaking your hand. I'm actually letting you know why. And so it minimizes the problem, right? When I go places, if you were to invite me to Red Lobster, I don't eat pork or shellfish because I'm Jewish, then I would let you know that is not a good destination for me, because my food choices would be very limited since I have most of the things on the menu. Right? And so again, it's a form of etiquette that minimizes assumptions and negations, because I'm being in integrity to say this is who I am, and these are things that I can or cannot do.
Excellent. I don't eat either of those things either, so we could go to the same restaurant and find something, I'm sure. Joseph, we are coming to the end of our show, and I do want to share your websites. And I'd love for you to explain to people what is the difference of the services that you offer at each of your companies. So first, we're going to look at JosefStetter.com, and then we'll go over to Corporate Culturalist. So tell us, what are the services that you offer here that people should be reaching out to you?
So I have 2 businesses, basically, and JosefStetter would reach me, and so would the Celebrate group in terms of my website. So JosefStetter is more geared to the individual that is frustrated that they're not getting promoted, they didn't get the raise, didn't get the bonus that they expected in December, given that we're in the new year. They feel stuck in their job, they're not going anywhere, and they're applying but not getting any response. They would reach out to me to let me know, hey, I want to be hired as this. Can you get me there faster, easier, better? You know, if I can save you 3 months to a year of your time and energy, instead of you spending a year applying for jobs, spending, let's say, 2 months applying for a job and getting exactly what you want and better, then that's what I'm an expert for. I'm kind of like your personal trainer for job finding, as the resume whisperer. My Celebrate group is more for corporations that need, or entrepreneurs that have reached the point where they can no longer be solopreneurs and they need to hire a team. I can help bring them the best of the best, and I guarantee my work because I put every candidate through personality assessments, through aptitude assessments, through my interview, and because of the amount of data that I collect on them, I can guarantee them more than anybody in the industry. And I've worked with small to global companies in helping them not only hire the right fit people, but keeping them, implementing a multitude of strategies for corporate culture, a multitude of strategies for social responsibility that actually engages their employees even more, and kind of, again, help companies understand their people better. So that's on the corporate side. So, you know, I'm available to help, whether it's the individual or the corporation that's experiencing growth and wants to find great talent and is having difficulty in the day-to-day. You know, I've posted a job, I've received 500 resumes, but none of them are really what I'm looking for. I can eliminate that and make it much faster and easier for you.
An impressive group of clients you've worked with.
Yeah, not all of them are listed, but yes, I've been a generalist in recruiting, so I've recruited in, as you can see, a multitude of industries, and I'm actually have a new client that our mutual friend was just offered a position for, that she is very excited about. And again, it's I kind of find the people that no one else can, because I don't do what other people do. I don't post jobs. I don't use job boards. I headhunt, which is an art that is lost more and more. I reach out to the people directly and bring them to you. I bring you the cream of the crop kind of thing. I bring you the people that are usually not actively looking for a job because they're very good at what they do and they're not looking. I get them to come to you. And I help you build a corporate culture, not just preach corporate culture, because a lot of organizations don't even know ideas beyond HR. Like, you know, I was speaking to somebody and they're like, how do you engage with a hybrid workforce? How do you get your employees engaged in the company? And I'm like, there's lots of strategies that you can do, like do a trivia night where everybody logs in and then offer prizes to the winner, where you can send them merchandise with the company logo to their house or to their remote location, for example. But there's ways of engaging them. And so part of what I do is brainstorm with leadership, go, you know, what's your budget and how often do you want to create events that engage your employees? And based on that, here's the strategies that we can do, or here's the ideas, here's experts that I can connect you with to do workshops, to do health and to do wellness programs, and et cetera, et cetera. So smarter companies are starting to realize the importance of offering mental health and well-being as part of their culture. And part of what I do is facilitate that and help companies better understand what to do, not from the typical HR in terms of benefits and you know, bereavement, but more from fun, one-of-a-kind activities for those companies.
So many ways you can bring value, new ideas, ways to shake it up. So thank you for being here again. I look forward to seeing you on Sunday at our reunion event. And
Yeah.
look forward to continuing this conversation next week. When I ask you what the topic is, we should continue with this because I have a lot more questions about etiquette and
Sounds
manners.
good.
Okay.
Sounds good. I'm happy to continue with the subject.
Fantastic. Joseph, what are your final messages you want to leave people with this evening?
We just started 2024. Don't waste it. Make it your best year ever. And reach out to me to help you get there faster.
Brilliant. I love how succinct that was. Thank you. Thank you, Joseph. And thank you, everybody watching, and for everyone listening. We really do appreciate you. We continue to grow. I have a lot of very exciting announcements to share with everyone on Sunday about where we're going, what's going on behind the scenes. So, Joseph, I look forward to sharing it with you as well then. So, have a great evening, a great morning, a great afternoon, great day, great night. Thanks again for being here. We'll see you again next week. Bye for now.
Bye.
Bye.